Hello, I'm Jonathan Bowman-Perks and welcome back to my favourite time of the week. And as part of the Inspiring Leadership series, I'm here with my good friend David. And David Heron is the Group CEO of Wilton and Bain, which began as a small boutique executive search firm and now is a global competitor with all the big boys. And great experience. It's got executive search, it's got interim, and it's got talent management options that they offer. I knew David before when we served together in Penna, and David was working with a friend of mine, James, in the interim business, while I was doing the board and executive search or executive coaching side. But a fascinating background from Uppingham into rugby, and we're going to have a talk about that now. So David, welcome. Great having you here.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Let's talk first about inspiring leadership and who inspired you. I think you talked about family and then also rugby. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been inspired by people that have achieved things in slight adversity, so sort of against the odds. And I've always felt, having come from a relatively privileged background, private education, that I've been ahead of the odds. And so a lot of the people that I find inspiring are ones that perhaps haven't had the background that I have. So, my father, big Leicester family, not a lot of money, council flat upbringing, sets up a business, grows it, sells it, retires by the age of 37.
Wow.
And you think, how did that happen? And actually, a lot of what I learned from him is that, anyone can achieve anything really. You just have to kind of put your mind to it. And I think he still now struggles with the fact that he was very, very successful, but his background's very humble. So if you look at his social existence, he's more happy talking to the guy who does the gardening than he is talking to some guy in a suit, which is interesting given that. So feet on the ground, I think, is very, very important.
Yeah.
And then sport. I grew up in the East Midlands at a time when, rugby was very, very big. Well, rugby still is very, very big up there. It's just a lot less successful. And in the 90s, I was lucky enough to watch some of the greatest players that have played for, probably England, the British Lions, and perhaps in the world. And I was quite a good player. I ended up getting into the Leicester Tigers Academy and Colts with my great friend Jamie Lawson-Brown from school. And we, I always remember driving into the ground and being surrounded by all of my idols. And then it suddenly dawning on me that this was kind of real. Now I was with the big guys. So I always.
What was their caption that they used to have as you drove in?
Yeah, so it was very, very clear. I can't remember whether it was on the gate that went up as you drove into Oval Park, the training ground, or wherever. But it seemed to be everywhere you looked was this slogan: "We are Leicester Tigers, and winning is why we are here." And I must have seen that about 9 times before I walked into the changing room. So by the time I got to the changing room, it was fairly unambiguous as to what the purpose of being there was.
But you were with some really famous names. I mean, who were the kind of people?
Incredible guys, Martin Johnson, Neil Batt, Dean Richards, guys who would have been entering the academy at a similar time to me, Lewis Moody, Jordan Murphy. I mean, these guys have gone on to captain their country, play for the British Lions, and win World Cups. So, you turn up from a private school that was a good rugby school with a manicured pitch that someone ran around cutting with nail clippers every day, to being in the mud bath that was Oval Park, training with people who wanted to kill you. So I remember running into the first. Brutal. Their training sessions, they were famed for scrapping.
What about that one when you ran at the...
I think it was the first time I ran into contact, and at Uppingham I would get the ball and run into anyone and they would go flying backwards. And I ran into this tackle shield, they hold these things, and I ran into it. And the guy, I think it was Lewis Deacon, lifted it up, who also went on to play for England, lifted it up and just kneed me in the head and reminded me that I was a posh kid, and that stood for nothing there. So that always... and that
must have really grounded you.
Yeah, I'm really grounded me.
I'm nothing special. I've got to my way. It's a meritocracy here.
Yeah, they had no... it was a very hierarchical place in that you knew who the senior people were. But in some ways it was totally unhierarchical. Everyone trained together. They didn't care if you were 17 or you were 35. You know, if you wanted to play for Leicester, you had to be able to play with everyone. So all of the drills were geared to togetherness and being as one. Someone made a mistake, everyone made a mistake, everyone's down doing press-ups.
Oh, right.
And that was just, you know, they had this thing called the Hill, which, you know, I'm sure there'll be people who listen to this who will have been there. Everyone will remember the Hill at Oval Park, which was just this bloody mud hill that seemed to go up forever. And you know, the drill was, if anyone dropped the ball, you just ran to the bottom of the mud hill, paired up with whoever was next to you, and then you ran up and down it until someone was sick. Which is quite, which is, I mean, this is 1997. Rugby's just gone professional. The British Lions have just won in South Africa. Johnson's just come back. Dean Richards is just retiring. You know, it's a pretty iconic time for, you know, I mean, arguably actually definitely now, given the scandal at Saracens over the last few months, the most successful English club rugby team, or European club rugby team potentially ever to play.
So for the uninitiated who are listening, the scandal at Saracens, that was a lovely throwaway line.
So the scandal at Saracens, I would have argued 2-3 weeks ago that Saracens were at least on a par with Leicester, but it turns out they've been breaching the salary cap and paying their players too much. So I'm a little bit torn on that, because in many ways you would say that is cheating, but in other ways they've actually built a brilliant academy and created some great people and been brilliant for English rugby. So I'm slightly pleased, because it means I can still say Leicester are the most successful.
Yeah. and in the time we've got, learning from mistakes. People are always interested in how you learnt from the things you got wrong. What did you learn from mistakes you made? Yeah,
I'm not sure I always had great self-awareness. I'm not sure that when you're young and trying to find your way in the world, you do have self-awareness. Really, someone like me, it was all about force of personality. You know, be louder, push harder. You know, kind of bludgeon your opponents in any situation. And as I've grown, I'm not sure I can think of any isolated mistakes, but I can think of lots of episodes where that's been the case, where, you know, I've been very self-serving to my own personal agenda. And I think as you become a leader and you become responsible for others, you kind of just learn that sort of dictatorship isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So dictating to yourself is kind of one thing.
Yeah.
But dictating or preaching to others, I think, is entirely different, really.
Very, very insightful. And I've seen in you, even in the few years since we've known each other, a much more sort of coach approach to leadership. When I've been with you and the team, you've actually remained quiet for a lot of the time, really, really listened, and then captured a few of the points. And I certainly like that style. So what would you give the listeners as your sort of top tip for them to take away today that you've learnt about leadership that you'd share with them?
Well, I think you have to be focused. You know, you have to absolutely know what you're trying to achieve, but you have to be open-minded. You have to realise there are a number of different ways to get there, and you know you know, every plan will go wrong.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean the ultimate destination ever changes. It just means you've got to reroute yourself every now and again. So I think what I've learned is be open-minded, never ignore, no idea is a bad idea. You know, kind of, respect everyone, encourage involvement and interaction. You know, if you want to build a high-performing team, you know, everyone's got a role to play.
Yeah, great. David, thank you. Absolute pleasure. Congratulations on a very successful business in Wilton and Bain, and I'm sure you'll continue to go from strength to strength. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, John.